All right. Welcome in, everybody. Dr. J here, and happy Monday. Welcome to another live stream. So, today, what I wanted to go through is how to lose 5 pounds this Christmas and into 2026. 5 pounds is always a great place to start. It's not something like it's like this superfluous number like 20, 30 pounds. So, this is just for people that just want to get the ball rolling. I understand that Christmas and Thanksgiving, there's going to be lots of good food, it's going to be very social. But there's a lot of benefits to either losing weight, especially if you're overweight or obese. And I can kind of indicate some of those things. And then I'm also going to give you a full blueprint. I'm going to share my screen and share exactly how you're going to do it. So make sure to stick around. If you found this helpful, also make sure to click that like, subscribe, and make sure to turn on your post notifications. So click that bell at the top right. That way you don't miss out on any notifications. We host videos like this, weekly live streams, Mondays at 12 p.m. But we also post a weekly video of value Mondays at 5 p.m. All right. So let's get this going here. So I'm going to share my screen in just a bit, but just to kind of reiterate on why you might be wanting to maintain a healthier weight. For one, there's overall less visceral fats. Viscera means organs. So we want to have less visceral fats overall in our body, which is going to decrease our triglycerides, is going to help improve our blood lipid panels by way of getting into a better diet. Likelihood is HDL, which is, seemingly good cholesterol goes up, but also triglycerides goes down. Secondly, is there's overall less joint pain. So if there's less overall fat mass on your body, and if you're increased musculoskeletal mass, which is in the form of muscle, then you're going to have a easier time doing things and navigating life and taking care of your kids and many other things in life. When you're heavier, you generally will have overall more joint stress. Lastly, is those that tend to have a propensity to be overweight or obese are also going to indicate more other forms of diagnoses later in the future. So, namely, diabetes and insulin resistance. To once diabetes incurs, then we're going to have an increased propensity for heart disease, as well as increased risk of other things like sepsis, cancer, etc. So, overall, losing 5 pounds is a small indicator of moving forward in the right direction. It's going to help you to kind of springboard you into 2026. So if you can lose maybe 3 to 5 pounds by the end of 2025, then make sure to stick around for future live streams. We'll be talking about how you can have more sustainable weight loss in the future. Okay, so let's go ahead and share my screen. And I'm going to keep this as super simple as possible so that it's not going to overcomplicate things and you're going to be on your path. So I'm going to give you very simple steps. If you can just stick to these steps over the month of December, and I'll even share with you some common pitfalls so that you don't fall into those, then I think we'll be off to the races. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to share my entire screen. And all right, hopefully you guys should see my screen. If you can, give me either a thumbs up or say yes in the comments. So lose 5 pounds during Christmas. How are we going to do that? Because like I said, there's so much good food. When we're social, we're generally eating more. We're generally more impulsive. And a lot of times we will stop exercising. So if you are on an exercise program, a lot of times that will put things on hold. It will say, hey, family is more important than my own fitness. I think we can have both. I think we can have family, still have a good time at family and friend gatherings, but still be able to actually say to yourself, like during the hardest time of your life, where it's hardest to lose weight or to get your fitness in check, you can be different from everyone else. So the very first thing I want to talk about is just being in an overall caloric deficit. Okay. Now there's going to be a few ways that we can do this. Okay. Caloric deficit is basically where you're eating less than what you are actually burning off, right? So if we're eating more than we're burning off, then we're in a caloric surplus, right? If calories in and calories out are actually the same, we call that caloric maintenance. We want to be in a deficit, and you must be in a deficit. There is no way around it. Numbers speak for itself. Calories is a unit of energy. It has no emotions whatsoever. So being in a caloric deficit is going to be key, especially if you're trying to lose weight. So basically, just to define this, calories out outweighs calories in. Now, how are we going to do that? So the first way, and I'm going to talk about the simplest way, because the harder ways are sometimes tracking every single calorie that you're eating, right? And I do that for myself, but that's oftentimes very hard for people to do. So what are some of the easiest ways to do it? So one of them is going to have choose one day to fast. Okay. Now I'm going to do this based on research. So you're going to choose one day to completely fast. All you're really going to consume on that day is either water. You can consume coffee at the same time. So water, coffee, and that's pretty much it. So what we're doing here and the benefits is that we're increasing insulin sensitivity. We're forcing our body to rely on ketones versus carbohydrates and glucose. All right, let's just call this glucose. So glucose is often a fast-acting fuel. We get that from carbs, but the thing here is that our brain preferably actually wants to use ketones. Ketones are induced where we're eating either a higher fat diet or in the midst of intermittent fasting. So if we want to produce more ketones, we want to switch away from carbs at least what we want to do is do that over a 36 or even a 72. Sorry, not 72. We want to do that over a 36 to 60-hour fast. So that means that that is 1.5 to 2.5 days of fasting. And if you want to be very sure of yourself, just choose the bottom one because 1.5 is much easier to stick to. I've actually done this for myself and I actually feel more focused. I speed up my fat loss. I'm actually and I noticed that I feel less lethargic actually on a fast. So all I do is drink water and coffee for that day. But specifically, this is a version of fasting where we do allow for about 400 to 500 calories, mainly composed of protein. So the reason why sometimes super, uh, fasting is not always the best for everyone because if you're trying to improve your metabolism and also increase sensitivity of your insulin long term, you also need to make sure that during that 1.5 to 2.5 day fast is that you maintain muscle mass, right? So let's say you're going through day to day stuff, walking, maybe lifting some groceries, lifting your kids. Let's say you actually decide to work out during this 1.5 day fast. You want to make sure that your body is not in a catabolic state, which means a muscle breakdown state. So while this is a fast, water and coffee are pretty much 0 to 10 calories, which is pretty much still fasting. And we're trying to rely on ketones. So we're doing this in the absence of carbs. At the end of the day, so usually at the end of the day, you are actually allowed to consume like a protein shake, normally 0 to 1 gram of carbohydrates, so like very little carbohydrates, or you want to prioritize some sort of protein. So whether that is some eggs or chicken breast or even some grass-fed beef, maybe even some full-fat yogurt. So the yogurt's going to be mainly composed of fat and protein, but we still want to be in the absence of carbs. So absence of carbs still. Okay. High in protein ideally. Okay. So what that's going to do is you're going to be in a fast, still going to increase your insulin sensitivity, but you're also going to be maintaining and preventing your body from breaking down muscle as a fuel source. Okay. So this is important that if you can do this for pick one day, I usually pick like a Wednesday or a Thursday or a Friday or something. Pick one day where you're going to start in the morning. So pretty much if you start this in the morning, technically you start it when you go to sleep, right? So if you go to sleep at 11, that's already a good amount of fasting. So you're technically doing like 1.5 days of fasting where you don't eat during night, you don't eat in the morning, just water or coffee. And then throughout the day, you're still fasting. But what you're going to do is eat 400 to 500 calories of purely protein at the end of the day to prevent muscle breakdown. Okay. I find this to be something that you can do at least one day a week, right? So one day per week. And if you want to speed up things, you technically can do a 2.5 day, although I find that that can be pretty brutal, especially during the holidays. So yeah, this would be one great strategy in order to be in a caloric deficit. Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about number 2. So number 2 is you want to be getting in 8 to 10K steps a day. Okay. Really important for overall just decrease mental stress. Walking is something called a low intensity steady state. So it's low intensity steady state cardio. Okay, it's called LISS. And what this does is it primarily utilizes fat. as a fuel source, specifically your visceral fat. Okay, so there are many ways to improve like VO2 max. There's many parameters that we can try to improve. If the overall goal is to actually lose fat, you don't always want to be running as hard as you can or biking as fast as you can. And if anything, that especially if you're somebody that let's say exercises but doesn't like to do the intense stuff, walking 8 to 10K steps a day is pretty simple to do. Right now during this live stream, I'm standing on a treadmill, but I'm usually not on a treadmill for the live stream. But when I'm talking with clients, writing emails, writing up programs for my clients, I'm usually walking on a treadmill. So I'm killing two birds with one stone. I've gotten very used to walking during this seemingly usually sedentary activity that a lot of people do. We sit at a computer for 6 to 10 hours. So one of my favorite quotes that I always say, especially on my podcast, is try to make as many sedentary activities active ones. So if you can make sitting at a desk active through now running or walking on a treadmill, great. Okay, you're improving your metabolism, your longevity, and you're working towards that visceral fat loss goal. Okay, so and especially if you, let's say you take like meetings, for example, let's say Zoom meetings for work, for example, you can try to see if you can keep your camera off and just simply walk during the meeting. You can walk outside or you can walk on a treadmill. You can try to do that too. Take your phone calls, ideally phone calls too, to your mom or cousins or family or colleagues. You can try to walk at the same time. All right. So 8 to 10K steps is not that bad. You don't have to set aside like 1.5 to 2 hours out of your day to like walk outside. Although, if you can, great. Do that early in the morning if you can. But I always see that if you're the general American that sits at a desk for a long period of time and you have kids to tend to, I always see that buying a walking treadmill can be very, very effective to get those steps in. Again, it's a slow, steady caloric burn that you're getting throughout the day, and because it is lower intensity, you are improving your, not, you're primarily influencing your body to utilize fat as a fuel source. Okay, so try to kill two birds with one stone. Okay, try to make sedentary activities active ones. Okay, so that's also like when I go eat, when I go eat my meals, I'm usually trying to knock out like a few push-ups and squats before I go eat any meal. When I'm brushing my teeth, I'm like, hey, brushing my teeth is at least 2 minutes. What can I do during these 2 minutes? I can do calf raises. I can I usually do single leg squats almost all the time. I do squats every single day for almost the past 7, 8 years, getting squats in while brushing my teeth. And I know that sounds silly or sounds excessive, but you are getting that more caloric burn throughout the day. All right. So 8 to 10K steps a day. And I would say also that, like, fitting in exercise into different crevices of time during your day. All right. So examples are doing push-ups at kitchen counter, walking during your Zoom meetings, push-ups before mealtime. Okay, a lot of stuff you can do here. Okay, stairways, right? I always say that, like, during stairways, like, get to associate, like, get to top of stairway, nope, get to top of stairway equals do 10 squats, right? So you assign like little, these are called like triggers. I learned this from a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a phenomenal, one of my top 5 books. And what you do is basically you pair, let's say you pair common activities that you do with activities that you want to do. So if you always do Zoom meetings, try to pair some sort of exercise with the Zoom meeting before, after, or during. Brushing teeth, right? I do stretches right when I turn off the shower. When I'm butt naked, I pretty much just do some spine mobility exercises before I even step out of the shower. Okay, so anyways, getting in all that activity and trying to assign more triggers to common activities, like when I go to kitchen, I'm going to do 10 squats. All that seems like it's just small, very trivial things, but over time, that additional caloric burn is going to increase your resting metabolic rate. It's going to help build muscle mass slowly, especially if you're assigning all these triggers to like strength exercises, and it's going to get you to your goal much faster. So this one is kind of like more optional, but the more important things is to get in that stay in a caloric deficit, be 8 to 10K steps a day as well. Okay. All right. Now let's go ahead and talk about. Oops. Let me go ahead down here. All right. Let's talk about absence of carbs. Okay. So I wouldn't say absence, but absence or lower, right? Lowering of carbs. Okay. So why would you want to do this here? Okay. So you can, and I understand that you can do carbohydrates during, like let's say during your holiday meals. Okay. But I would always argue that if you are more of a higher level athlete, that you do and probably need to prioritize carbohydrates, especially like let's say a high school kid that runs 5 days a week or plays basketball 5 days a week. They need to be in carbs. But if you're somebody that is starting at a place where you haven't exercised a lot and getting back into exercise is already a chore, and let's say you're trying to do some weight training, but you're not lifting super heavy or super frequent, you can afford to be in a carb state of about 50 to 100 grams of carbs or less. Okay. So even during your holiday meals, so let's say during holiday meals or typical meals at home, prioritize fats and proteins and deprioritize carbohydrates. So protein, I already told you what that does, where you eat it, we break it down into amino acids. It also increases the thermic effect of food. So it's going to increase your metabolism. It's going to increase your metabolism because it takes more energy to break down a piece of steak or chicken versus breaking down Cheetos, for example. All right, the body has to work much harder to break down meat. So therefore, you're increasing something called the thermic effect of food, the energy and the calories needed in order to actually break that down. So while you're increasing your calories by a hair and you're increasing your amino acids, you're actually losing calories at the same time, which is phenomenal. Fats, the fats have gotten a bad rep. And that's why like I want to talk about this from an immediate standpoint of wanting to lose 5 pounds during the holidays, but then what you can prioritize going into 2026. If you eat more fat, I think a lot of people think that if they eat more fat, they will become fat. I mean, people also think that because fats is actually more calories per gram, which is 9 calories per gram for fat, but protein and carbs is 4 calories per gram. You would think, oh yeah, we need to prioritize more protein and carbs. But like I said, if you're more sedentary or you're not lifting very heavy or not doing a lot of exercise frequently, you can afford to actually eat much lower carbohydrates and eat a lot more fats. So what's that going to do? It's going to increase your insulin sensitivity. When we're eating lots of carbs, especially processed and refined carbohydrates, your body actually becomes less insulin sensitive and become more metabolically insulin resistant. That means that when we eat carbs, we usually want to shuttle those carbohydrates into our liver and then also into our muscles. So insulin is the hormone that actually is secreted by the pancreas when in the midst of glucose and carbohydrates. It says, oh, okay, well, there's carbs in our bloodstream. We want to bring those carbs into the working muscle and we want to store it there. But when there's too much carbs, insulin, quote unquote, it gets overwhelmed and it becomes sort of ignorant to the carbs. So that's why their carbs or their blood sugar spikes so high when you eat carbohydrates, especially if you're insulin resistant. So if you eat less carbs, right, then insulin is not overwhelmed. Insulin can start to recalibrate itself and can start to utilize carbs effectively when you decide to eat carbs. So eating more fats is actually going to trigger to your body to utilize fat as a fuel source. You're going to lose weight when you're eating more fat and protein. Fats and proteins are also more satiating. So when we eat like cottage cheese or we're eating full fat yogurt, for example, it's a lot of fat and a lot of protein. So we tend to be more satiated. We tend to have less of those energy drags, especially like let's say you eat a high carb meal, during lunchtime and then you go back to work, you usually feel pretty lethargic, right? Because carbs is secreting a lot of insulin and your body's working very hard. So it becomes to be very lethargic and very sluggish. When you're eating fat, you're actually, again, you're not breaking down those fats into glucose, right? Where actually those fats are being utilized by something called the electron transport chain. It's converting some of those fats into ketones, and your brain loves to use ketones preferably as a fuel source more than carbohydrates. So fats, really big thing for visceral fat loss, improving energy levels, feeling more satiated. And so therefore, if you're more satiated, the less likelihood that you're going to overeat during the holidays. So my typical Christmas meal, for example, if I went to like friends or family's house, is usually prioritizing meat, okay, prioritizing butter, okay, can eat a little bit of vegetables too, although not even that needed, but just vegetables is just it's just more high volume. So I really don't have to get my vegetables, but that just takes up some volume in my stomach. So meat, butter, okay. I'll tend to eat cheese during the holidays, especially those charcuterie boards. I'll prioritize the cheese, okay, and basically no carbohydrates, okay. I understand that carbs is like something that like it's nostalgic, it's something that like we're used to eating the mashed potatoes and all. But realistically, like if you go through a Christmas meal without carbohydrates, if you can minimize your vegetable oil consumption too, that's another subject for elsewhere. You can really feel better. You can actually be like, oh shoot, I don't feel as bad. I don't feel as lethargic. I don't feel inflamed. You'll be very surprised that you just eat like higher fats and higher amounts of protein. It can really make a huge difference to how you feel with that meal. But you also will notice like going into the next day that you haven't gained like a ton of weight. Okay, carbs is what kind of holds that helps hold and retain water, especially in combination with sodium. So that this here is something where like I've had a lot of clients just go get in about 50 to 100 or even virtually zero carbs, and many of them have lost as much as 3 to 5 pounds in less than a week. It's pretty surprising. Depending on how lean or how much body fat you have, you can lose a significant amount of weight if you go way less carbs and you prioritize the fats and the proteins. All right. Okay, so let's just kind of reiterate on some of the things we talked about. Caloric deficit, choosing one day out of the week. Don't choose obviously your holiday day, like where you're with friends and family, but choose a random work day and you're just going to fast. And at the end of the day, it's technically not like a full fast. You can eat like a big piece of meat just to make sure that you're maintaining that muscle mass. All right. Then we're going to do 8 to 10K steps a day. If you can set aside a long time to get outside and actually get some walking in, amazing. If you're not that person, then try to kill two birds with one stone. Try to take all your phone calls or Zoom calls and just walk around the neighborhood or walk around and pace the house, something like that. All right. So then we're going to try that, like anytime that we have a crevice of time, try not to look at social media. Try not to do something that's not going to inch the needle forward with something. So if you know you're in the habit of like watching long hours of Netflix, or if you're on social media and you are that culprit that watches social media for like 30 minutes, and you're like, where did all that time go? Or if you're that person that like, let's say your meeting ends at 12:50 and you have 10 minutes to spare before your next meeting or before you have to get back to work. Try to get in some push-ups, calf raises, squats, lunges. Try to just get in something. I get in stuff while shopping for groceries. I get in exercise nearly everywhere that I go, and all that is additional calories burned. Absence of lowering of calories, we just reiterated on that. Okay. So very important that like if you are somebody that's higher level athlete, you might want to afford 150 to 200 grams of carbs. But if you're not somebody that's exercising very intensely right now, you'll feel a lot better metabolically. You have way more energy in the tank. Everything will improve from insulin sensitivity as well if you stick to carbs lower than 50 to 100 grams. Okay. Lastly, this is more like optional, but like strength training daily. Okay. And this could be as little as 5 minutes upwards of 60 to 120 minutes, right? Okay. This is me right now. Okay. This is what I'm doing every single day, no matter what, without fail. Um, but I know that you, if you're listening right now, you may be somebody that is not strength training at all or very little, very seldom, and you just want to develop the habit of doing strength training 5 days a week. Now, what does strength training do from, okay? Okay, so improving muscle mass equals more calories burned at rest. Okay, simple enough. People that are more muscular tend to be burning more at rest, right? We have higher resting metabolic rate. I'm sitting at pretty much 11 to 12% body fat, not my leanest, but for me, having about 130 to 135 pounds of muscle out of the 155 to 160 pounds that I am right now, that's why I'm able to afford to eat a significant amount of food and not really gain anything, right? But you have to work for that long term. So that's one of the benefits. The other benefits is it decreases pain. So when you are doing strength training, that secretes endorphins, decreases pain, and increases endorphins. So endorphins, one of the main roles of that neurochemical is actually to make us happier and to decrease pain, right? So we want to do that. The less pain that we're in, the more the more motivated we are to actually move our bodies, right? When we're less pain. Okay. Other benefits are reduced joint stress. Okay. When we have more muscle, even around areas of arthritis, it's always been shown that even people with arthritis, if they build muscle mass around that area of arthritis, they feel that arthritis much less. I personally know that I have arthritis in many areas, from my knee, my shoulder, my neck has been confirmed since my early 20s. My low back has a little bit of arthritis, but I don't let it go over my life. I don't feel it because I'm consistently strength training. Okay. All right. So outside of the benefits that this, I mean, decreased blood pressure, right? God, so many things. Decreased blood pressure, decrease resting heart rate. Okay. Improve quality of life. I mean, God, you name it, right? Increase longevity. Okay. Maintenance of muscle mass will help you to decrease your chance of dying of anything, right? So, a plethora of benefits. We're not going to spend too much time there. Okay. But how can you incorporate more strength training into your day? Okay. So choose 2 to 3 exercises you're familiar with. Ideally, multi-jointed or compound. And I'll tell you what that means. And stick to bare minimums of 5 to 10 minutes daily. Okay. So the multi-jointed exercises that I'm talking about are things such as push-ups, squats, deadlifts, lunges. So things that cross multiple joints. So when you do a lunge, your ankle, knee, hip, and even your abdominals and your low back are all working at the same time. The more muscles you work at the same time, you're burning more calories per unit of time. Yeah. If you're only doing bicep curls just to grow your biceps, it is an exercise you can do as an accessory, but I wouldn't prioritize that if you're only choosing 2 to 3 exercises. So if you only choose like a small subset of exercises, you always want to go with multi-jointed or compound, because that has more calories burned and you're working more muscles per unit of time. Okay. So that includes your squats. Okay. So squats, deadlift, lunges, bench press, overhead press. Okay. Rows, pull-ups. Okay, you name it. So those are all things that cross multiple joints. Okay, you don't want to choose the leg extensions, even calf raises to an extent, because that's just one joint. You want to choose those exercises. So choose 2 to 3 exercises that I say you're familiar with. You shouldn't choose an exercise for my Instagram or like, oh, that looks sexy. That looks like it'll burn a lot of calories. Choose something that you have done in the past. Most people have done squats. So usually squats is a good one. If you've done lunges, great. That will be another one. And then maybe choose one for upper body. So that namely, it could be push-ups, it could be dumbbell rows, it could be pull-ups or chin-ups if you have the capacity to do so. So you choose those exercises and try to get in those exercises in bouts of 8 to 20, and then do that for 5 to 10 minutes straight. Make sure to take your rest periods if needed. But if you just stick with 5 to 10 minutes, you are going to build a little bit of muscle mass. You're getting your resting metabolic rate up. All right. And and it's simple. You don't have to be in the 60 to 120-minute range to lose 5 pounds of weight. You can have a daily standard of 6 to 7 days a week of strength training for 5 to 10 minutes daily. That's really what you need. And if you're saying that you can't get that in, you might as well just kick yourself off this live stream, because everybody can afford 300 to 600 seconds of exercise. Okay. You take ownership over your body. Don't let things go to waste. Don't let your body go to waste. Don't let for something bad to happen in your life in order to start making these changes, right? Start making those changes now. So I would say choose. That's the last thing I'll say. Is number 5. Choose 2 to 3 exercises. Okay, and if you want to, feel free to always drop any of the 5 things that I just said. Feel free to comment below any questions you have. And if you also found this helpful, again, comment, let me know, give me some feedback on these live streams and whether they were helpful. Let me know if you wanted presented it differently. But I just want to give you a little schematic, very easy schematic of things that you can do. Okay. Um, no doubt about it that the way I'll preface this is that in order to lose 5 pounds of weight, you simply just got to do it. Nobody, barely anybody at home is going to force you to put in the work. And there's not going to be any magic pill, at least long-term pill, that is going to help you to lose the weight. Okay. There's also no magic surgery, right? I've heard of people do liposuction, then they gain the weight back. I've heard of people get on Ozempic or some sort of other pill, and then they end up gaining all that weight back, because a pill is not going to solve things. You have to actually just build better habits long term. Okay. So don't look at like really my habits right now. Um, you don't compare yourself to Michael Phelps, or you don't compare yourself to any high level athletes and be like, dude, that just seems so far away. You start your journey where you are. You create your own baselines of, your non-negotiables. Maybe your non-negotiable from today is, I'm going to do 5 minutes of strength training, and that's what I'm going to do every day for the rest of my life. So you kind of set like new baselines for yourself, so that you maybe lose 3 to 5 pounds by end of December, but you want to continue that process long term, and you only do that through building better habits and not waiting for perfect times, starting at any point in your life. Okay. Imperfect action is always going to supersede perfect inaction. Okay. Waiting for perfect times and not doing anything is not going to get you anywhere. Okay. So always just start. Okay. Try to put very little emotion into things and simply just start. Sometimes you need a little bit of emotion to actually get your body going. You can be motivated by pain or pleasure. Just said that to one of my clients. You can be motivated by the pain of losing your life early, or being a burden to your family, or whatever's going to motivate you. Be motivated by some sort of pain, right? You don't need to be motivated by pleasure too. So the pleasure of being able to survive longer, be there for your family, be able to do vacations into your 60s, 70s, and 80s, and not be the person that just that trails behind. You can do everything that you want to. Think about that. Let that embrace it. Close your eyes and let your body simmer into those pleasurable experiences. Okay, I'm motivated by a little bit of both. I've had a lot of hurt in my life. I've had family, have certain sicknesses, and I'm very motivated by that. I'm also motivated by my kids' face. I'm motivated by being able to keep up with my kids, sprint with them, put them on my back, and do push-ups and squats and a whole bunch of stuff. And that's very, very motivated, just to be able to influence my kids to be healthier too. My daughter is literally every day right now, just side note, but my daughter is like literally getting on the floor every day when I'm around, and she's saying like push-ups. She's like, I'm doing push-ups. My daughter is 2, by the way. She's 2 years old, and she's consistently trying to do push-ups like her dad. All right. So outside of just losing the weight now for whatever reasons you have, whether that be aesthetic, you want to look better, maybe you do want to just feel better, right? But you won't feel better waiting for perfect times and not taking any action at all. All right. There's contractors, there's so many contractors, there's jobs, there's so many other things in life that will deter you from where you want to be. Okay. Don't let it deter you. Don't wait for the right time. If you have a little crevice of time, 2 minutes, all right, get in 2 minutes of squats. Okay. You have 5 minutes before your bachelorette show. All right. Get in your squats and your deadlifts then. Get in your some lunges. All right. Get in something. Okay. So that's what I got for today. And I really hope that I'll stop sharing now. But if you guys ever have any questions for me, drop them below. If you ever go to my profile, my YouTube profile, there's a couple things you can take action on. Again, subscribe and click that bell notification because we host Monday. We upload videos Monday, and we also do a live training on Mondays every single week. And also, there is a QR code in my bio. So if you go to the QR code or you click on the link, you can actually send in an application. And what you'll be applying for is a free pain relief demo and assessment. So we help actually busy parents and professionals eliminate chronic pain and help them get stronger, more resilient as they get older. So if that's something that at all interests you, make sure to scan that QR code or click on the link, fill an application, and you'll be enrolling for a free pain relief demo. And on that call, we can map out a plan. You'll actually come out with some very actionable steps. If you want to take those actions and actually fulfill that plan with us in your corner to help actually do that with you, we've been coaching hundreds of people around the world for over 7 years now. So we have a huge track record. Check our Yelp page, check out every place. We're 5 stars across the board. All right. All right, guys. So I really hope that's helpful. Merry early Christmas, happy holidays. And I really hope that you can make some positive changes to your health rather than negative ones and waiting for January to show up before you start making some changes. All right. See you guys soon.